Angle relationships in triangles. We're going to start by talking about the different kinds of triangles. An isosceles triangle has two congruent sides, and the angles that are attached to those two congruent sides are congruent. It looks like we're going to have to change our text size. And the size of the text box. So in an isosceles triangle, angles adjacent to congruent sides are congruent. An equilateral triangle, all sides are congruent to each other and all angles are congruent to each other. So all angles are congruent. In a right triangle, it must have a right angle. And you'll know it's a right angle with the little box. For similar triangles, corresponding angles are congruent. What that means is the angles that are in the same spot on the two triangles are congruent. So this angle would be congruent to that angle. This angle would be congruent to that angle. And this angle would be congruent to that angle. When we look at page 2, we're talking about the interior angles of a triangle. The interior angles is the first blank. Interior angles. Interior angles are angles formed by the segments that lie inside the triangle. So what that means is, if you have a triangle, these angles are interior. They're inside the triangle. And the rule, it's stated on the front. The very first page, it says interior angles of triangles. They add up to 180 degrees. That's for every triangle. The three angles inside the triangle always add up to 180 degrees. So if we come here, it says determine the value of x in the triangle. What you're going to do is it's giving you 2 and you have to find the third angle. You know they add up to 180, so you would say 51 plus 78. When you add that up, you're going to subtract it from 180, and the answer will give you the missing part, so your x. So you're going to start by adding 51 and 78. 8 plus 1 is 9. 7 plus 5 is 2, or 12, so that's 129. So you have 180 minus 129. And when you subtract 180 minus 129, 10 minus 9 is 1, 7 minus 2 is 5. X is equal to 51 degrees. Example 2, determine the measures of each angle. So in this one, you're going to have to pull some knowledge from yesterday. But we're going to start by looking at this first triangle. We know this angle is 90 because there's a little square inside of it. It's a right angle. And we know this angle is 45. So to find y, we're going to do 180 minus the sum of 45 and 90. So 45 plus 90 is 135. And when you subtract 180 minus 135, you have to regroup. You get 10 minus 5 is 5. 7 minus 3 is 4. So y equals 45. So you're going to come here. Y is 45. Now this is where you're going to have to pull back some knowledge from yesterday. If y is 45 and these two are vertical angles, then we also know this angle is 45. So if we're going to find x, we have to do this angle plus this angle subtracted from 180. So x equals 180 minus the sum of 45 and 95. So we first have to add those two angles. 5 plus 5 is 10. 9 plus 1 is 10 plus 4 is 14. So we have 180 minus 140. And 180 minus 140 is 40 degrees. So x is equal to 40. Example 3 says determine the values of the missing angles, and there's two here. Notice it's a rectangle, so you know that this angle right here is also a right angle. So to find x, you would say x equals 90 minus 40, because that 40-degree angle and x together are complementary, which means they add up to 90. So x equals 50. Now you have some knowledge from the first part that you can use on your second part. To find y. You have x is 50, and you have this angle here, which we know is a right angle, so it's 90. So y is equal to, this is a triangle here, so this is 180 minus the sum of 90 plus 50. 90 plus 50 is 140, and y equals 180 minus 140, and 180 minus 140 is 40 degrees. So y is 40. Okay, so that's the end of page 2. We can go on to page 3. And page 3 is talking about exterior angles. Exterior angles are formed by one side of the triangle and the extension of the adjacent side. And if we go back to our first page, which would be the front of our notes, it says exterior angles of triangles. If you notice, you have your triangle here. These are all your interior angles. And this is exterior angle 1. This exterior angle is equal to the sum of angle A and angle B. And that rule always works. So you have angle A and angle B. If you add them together, it equals that exterior angle. So we're going to go back to our third page and look at our examples. And example 4 says, suppose the measure of angle 4 is 135 degrees. I'm going to fill in my diagram with what I know, because that will help me later on. It says determine the measure of angle 2. Well, here's angle 2. And this angle here is giving me some information with a little box. That means it's 90 degrees. And I can work this problem one of two ways. Remember I said these two angles add up to that angle. So I could say angle 2 plus 90 equals 4. I'm sorry, angle 4, which is 135 degrees. And so I can subtract 90 from both sides. And angle 2 equals 135 minus 90. We would do 5 minus 0 is 5. And then we could regroup, which would still be 13. So that's a 4. 13 minus 9 is 4. So angle 2 is 45 degrees. The other way that you would work this problem, if you pay attention to this line right here, this is a straight line. The straight line is always 180. So you could work out the problem by saying, okay, if 1 plus 4 equals, angle 1 plus angle 4 adds up to 180, then angle 1 is 180 minus 135. And when I do 180 minus 135, I have to regroup. 10 minus 5 is 5. 7 minus 3 is 4. I get 45. That means this angle is 45. That's what I just found. Angle 1 is 45. And because I know the interior angles of a triangle, remember I still have my triangle here. So I know angle 1, angle 2, and this right angle, they all add up to 180. So if I didn't know angle 2 yet, I could say, oh, then angle 2 is equal to this 180 minus the sum of 90 and 45. And I would have to do the sum first. So 180 minus 90 and 45 is 135. So angle 2 equals 45 degrees. So angle 2 is 45. Example 5, determine the measures of the interior angles. And again, this can be worked two different ways. For angle Y, this right here is a straight line, and the measure of a straight line is always 180. So if Y plus 130 equals 180, we can find angle Y by doing 180 minus 130. So that gives you 50. Since this is 50, and I know that these three add up to 180, I can say X is equal to 180 minus the sum of 40 plus 50. 40 plus 50 is 90, and 180 minus 90 is 90. So X equals 90. And Y equals 50. And just like the other one could be done two different ways, when we found this X, we could have just said this plus this equals 130. So X is equal to 130 minus 40, which will still give you 90 degrees. So there's two ways to find angle X in that example. Example 6, solve for P. With example 6, there's quite a few unknowns, but we can easily find them. We would have to be careful. We don't know this one here, but of course we do know this angle here is equal to this angle plus this angle. So if we found this one, we could subtract it from 130. Well, how will we find this one? Well, if you notice, 110 and this angle together form this straight line. So we can find this angle by doing 180 minus 110. And when you do 180 minus 110, you get 70. So here I have a 70-degree angle right here. I know that 70 plus P equals 130. So all I have to do is subtract 70 to find P. So P is equal to 60 degrees.